I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand in 1984. A few years ago, I met this doctor who actually worked at that camp, right? And you know what he said to me? He said, did you know that 1 out of 3 babies that were born in that camp, in Vinai, didn't make it past their 2nd birthday? My parents was in that camp for 10 years, and while they were there in that camp, they had 3 babies. And in 1987, we landed here and came to America. Statistically, one of us wasn't supposed to survive. Statistically, one of us wasn't supposed to make it here. But against all odds, we did. So that fact, it changes everything about me. And it changes everything that I do. You want to know something? Going to college, I studied communications. And my professors at UW La Crosse reminded me of this, that you cannot not communicate. We're always communicating. It's in our bodies. You're always sending messages. You're always receiving messages. You're always decoding messages. That's what it is. It's literally in our DNA. We are constant communicators. When I was growing up, at my house, my parents taught me how to speak Hmong. And then when I went to school, I learned how to speak English, becoming bilingual early on. But it wasn't until adulthood that I realized my family has been speaking another language all along, one that I didn't recognize until much later. From the moment we are born to the moment we die, we're always intaking everything. We're always learning. So I'm thinking, what if the most powerful, universal language isn't spoken? What if it's not even verbal? What if it's food? Food holds meaning. It carries emotion, memories, and identity. It tells stories without using words. And food is the language I speak the best. My name is Yia Vang. I'm a proud son of Hmong refugees. I'm the founder of Union Hmong Kitchen and the owner and chef at Vinai, where we serve food that tells our story. And that's the language I speak, the language of food. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, I'm a cook, right? I love it. I see the world through the eyes of the kitchen. My whole adult life has been about, big cuts of meat and cutting boards and big knives and, fire and all that stuff. I learn about everything in life, through the kitchen. I learn about timing and pressure from grilling a steak, right? So, you got your pan, right? It's super hot, right? And you take that piece of steak, whatever cut you want, and you lay that steak right on that pan, and you hear that sizzle. You want to hear that. That's the number one thing you want to hear. If you don't hear it, you got problems. So you hear, I mean it. You want to hear that. And you know what? Something happens. There's this, while you press that steak down lightly, not too hard, lightly, there is this, in that pressure you put on, there's this beautiful reaction that happens between the sugars and the amino acids, and it comes together and it has that sear, right? And it's so delicious. It's so rich in flavor. But if you push it too hard and you let it sit too long, what happens? It burns. It becomes bitter. It's not something you want. That's life. Pressure can bring you the best things out of you. If you lean into it, it's amazing. If you got to know when to lean away, lean in, everything. See, that's how I understand the world. That's how the world works for me. I call it the lens of the kitchen. Food is how I speak. The kitchen and the food becomes the vernacular. And if we, talk this way, we create a completely amazing common language that we can use. Even if we don't share the same words, we share flavors, rhythm, and understanding. It brings people together across cultures, background, and time. Growing up, I just wanted to fit in. Right? I was embarrassed to let kids know that I spoke Hmong. It made me feel different. You guys want to know how I learned English? Late night talk shows and sitcoms. I would watch them, right? And I'd go into the bathroom And I would make sure my parents didn't hear me, but then I would actually look in the mirror and I would emulate these words. I wanted to make sure I didn't have an accent. So I learned how to enunciate very well, actually to the point where I remember calling my cousin's house. And she was like, Dad, I think there's like a salesman on the phone. Like there's a white guy on the phone, right? And I was like, yes, I made it. I was mistaken for a white dude on the phone. But I didn't realize it then. What was going on was I was running so hard away and so fast to trying to fit in that I was actually leaving my Hmong identity behind me. Meanwhile, my parents stood strong and rooted. While I was drifting away, they quietly held on and, preserving our language and our traditions and our values. I didn't see their quiet strength back then. They didn't give big speeches about resilience or identity. You know what they did? They just lived it. Their journey from war to refugee camp to a new life in America was its own kind of hero's journey. Now, I used to do this when I was a kid. That kid right there, he would go to bed and he would pray and he would hope that in the morning he'd wake up with a family that was white and they spoke English and then he looked like everybody else. And I was so ashamed of it. But you guys want to know something? Over 30 years later, I cannot not speak about them. That's all I want to do. I go to bed now, hoping the next day I get to speak about them. I get to tell their story. Because you know what? Every dish I cook, with every story I tell, it's a quiet thank you to my parents, a way to honor where I come from and the strength that was passed on to me. I believe that there's one language spoken all around the world, and it's food. I felt the language of food at like most collaboration dinners we do when the farmer comes in, right? And he goes, hey, this is all I got. Or the shrimper or the fisherman, they would come in. And all chefs from all different backgrounds, and we literally would speak different languages. You know what we do? We didn't have to say much to them. We just gather around and we knew what to do. Why? Because we would get it. We spoke the language of food. Ask anybody, what is your favorite dish? Right? Or what's a dish that you grew up with? I remember I asked my buddy that once, and he's like, I don't know, he kind of felt like, and so the first thing he said to me was, he's like, I don't know, like hot dogs and mac and cheese, and that's what he talked about. But it was like the good hot dog, the one with the good snap on it, you know what I'm talking about. And he said that, and there was like a sense of shame in his voice, and I just looked at him, and I said, do you know that hot dog and mac and cheese, you know what that is? That's a mother's love. A single mother on a Friday night, doing her best, giving everything she can so her children can have some. No matter the accent, ingredient, or techniques, food gives us a rhythm that we can all move to. It's how we understand each other every day without saying a word. We all eat, right? So here's my ask. When you eat, be quiet for a moment. Be curious and let the food do the talking, because food can tell a story. Stories about food usually doesn't start with, big complex question. It's a simple question. In my parents' world, you don't need truffles, caviar, or fancy French words that you can't pronounce, right? You know what they do? We cook with taro, with yuca, banana leaves, Hmong mustard greens, Hmong cucumbers grown from their farm, carrots, herbs, things that we pull straight from the dirt. Here in Minnesota, I've met people who have never heard about Hmong people, who doesn't understand what Hmong palates are or Hmong flavors are, but you know what they know? They know root vegetables. They know leafy greens. They know what it feels like on those harsh summers when you're working that field super hard and you might not have anything to show for. They know how to make the most of what's in their hands and what's around them. Food doesn't just feed us, it connects us. It opens the door to someone's story. And if you're willing to ask, because food is never just about food. It's about memory. It's about meaning. It's a story served on a plate. The greatest gift my parents gave me was the language of food. But it wasn't until I came home, literally, and I cooked and ate with them, that I truly understood that every dish they made, that when I was growing up, was made by their hands. Because you know what? Those hands were connected to these arms, and their arms were connected to this body. And that body had a heart, and in that heart there was a soul. And you know what that soul says to me? We love you. We went through war. We sacrificed so that you can have a hope of a future. And we would do it all again, no questions asked. When you realize that someone has given up their life so that you can have life in the full, it changes the way you talk to people, it changes the way you treat people, and for me, it changed the way I cook. My mom once told me, I can't speak English to my grandkids. It breaks her heart because, the grandkids, they don't speak Hmong much. So she said, all I can do is I can make them food to show them how much I love them. My little nephew, Lukey, he's like, Grandma, I want egg rolls, So that morning, Mom didn't make 1, 3, 5, 12. No. She made 100 egg rolls. Yeah. She wanted Lukey to know, my love for you is big and strong. When I love you to the max. I don't love you 12 egg rolls. I love you 100 egg rolls. My parents' legacy lives in every dish we make. Right across the street, bringing this home to our restaurant, Vinai, right across the street is another award-winning restaurant, Oro, run by my good friend Gustavo Romero. He's a Mexican chef. He was a DJ, came to America, an immigrant. We're 2 different immigrants, literally from different parts of the world, right? You got Thailand, you got Mexico, you guys know what I'm saying? But we have one common language, food. When we talk, it's not just about food, it's about family. He talks to me about mole, I talk to him about curry, he tells me about tortillas, I talk to him about purple sticky rice. 2 immigrant kids raised worlds apart, now cooking literally on the same block. And we get each other. Different languages, I try my best at Spanish, no comprende, at all. And so, but same story. When both our restaurant, this past year, made it on the New York Times list, I ran over to him with paper in hand and I hugged him and we cried. We literally just cried together. I said, can you believe this? We never thought in our life this would be possible. You never thought that people would hear our stories through our food. That's the power of food. Every dish has a story. And if you follow that story long enough and close enough, you get to the people behind the food. And once you're there, it's actually not about food, it's about people. Because you know what? Food is this catalyst into cultivating great relationships. Food is the doorway to understanding, to connect to each other. And if you really want to know people, it has to start with their food. At the heart of it all, I'm a child of strength, raised by sacrifice, by resilience, and taught a language that can be served on a plate. Food is the language my parents passed down to me. It's one I speak every day. It's a bridge between generations, between strangers, between the past, between the future. Success is not measured in awards, and big headlines. Success is measured in a legacy. What you leave behind. The echo that is heard for many generations to come. This next part, I have this great thing to wrap up this whole thing, but I want to tell you this story. I'm really led to tell you this story. A few years ago, we were finalists for the James Beard. And my sister called my mom and explained to her what the James Beard is. My mom called me that night, I was driving home, and she said, honey, today your sister called me and told me about this award that they gave you. And then in this award, that it's for the whole United States. And you were one of the best in the United States. And my mom said to me, she said, honey, I want to tell you a story. She said, when we were in Vinai, we were in the refugee camp, it was so poor, it was so hard, there were so many people dying that every morning I wake up and I would pray to God, and as an act of mercy, I would want him to let me die because I couldn't bear to live anymore. And she said, one morning, when I woke up, there was a voice in my heart. And that voice said, you can't. You have to survive. You have to be strong. Because you don't know it yet. Mom said, this voice said to me, you don't know it yet. But your children is going to change the world. And I need you to to take this pain and be strong and move forward. She said to me, today when I heard this news, I knew that promise was fulfilled. She waited almost 50 years to see that promise fulfilled. So when you come to Vinai and you eat from our table that comes from mom and dad's hands, you partake in that story. You're a part of that. When you eat the pepper sauce, the peppers that are grown on their farm, you partake in that. That is the story. So here's the deal. At the end of the day, guys, like I said, I'm a cook, right? It's like, start fire, put meat on fire. Oh, so cool. You know, like that's what I do. I love it. But you don't need to be a chef to speak this language. You don't even need to be a good cook to speak this language. Sit at a table with someone new. Ask the question, where does this food come from? Because, I don't know, maybe in this world we're living in right now, the most important language that we can use to speak to each other is the language of food. Thank you.